Hare Krishna. So we'll start with chapter 3, Karma Yoga. Here in Karma Yoga, we are covering like mainly 3 points, like it's just shown on the screen, which is better renunciation or Nishkam Karma Yoga. Second is work as a sacrifice for Vishnu and conquering the greatest enemy that is there, which is lust. So Bhagavad Gita chapter 3, the summary, Karma Yoga is Krishna in the previous chapter. He recommends Buddhi Yoga or Krishna consciousness as the path of self-realization. So Arjuna thought and misunderstood this as retiring from active life and practicing like penances in the secluded places in the forest. But Krishna is also insisting him to fight in the battle, right? Fight the battle. So Arjuna is a little bit confused, still confused. He thinks that Buddhi Yoga means that one should retire from active life and practice penance and austerities. But Krishna says, no, fight, but do it in the spirit of renunciation and offer all the results to the God. This is the best purification, he said. By working without attachment, one attains the supreme. So performing sacrifices for the pleasure of Krishna guarantees prosperity and freedom from any sinful reactions. So even if a self-realized person is there, he should also never give up his duty. So he acts for the sake of educating others. So Arjuna then is asking Krishna, what is it that causes one to engage in sinful or papa kriya or sinful acts? Krishna answers in this lesson, in this chapter, that it is lust which induces one to sin. Last chapter we did how, lust, we saw the whole cycle, right? So this lust, it entangles, it bewilders one person and it entangles also one in this material world only. So lust presents itself in, where does it present itself? It presents itself in 3 places: senses, mind, intelligence. But it can be counteracted. How? By self-control. So here he was like, how Karma Yoga is better than sannyas, being a sannyasi. So how? Because you have to do your work in a devotional way. It is easy to get liberation that way than renouncing everything and sitting. Krishna describes, Nishkam Karma Yoga, working with knowledge and detachment is better than renunciation. So Karma Yoga, you have to do Nishkam Karma Yoga, have some jnana, use your knowledge and do your work with detachment. These things is the best. That's what he's telling. So in chapter 3, shloka 2, he says, Vyami shreneva vakyena buddhim mohayasiva me tadekam vada nishchitya yena shreyo hamapnuyam. Who is going to read the translation? Hare Krishna.
May I?
Please, Pooja.
My intelligence is bewildered by your equivocal instructions. Therefore, please tell me decisively which will be most beneficial for me.
So in second chapter, many paths were explained, like Sankhya Yoga, Purusha and Prakriti, that we are not the body, we are the souls, right? Buddhi Yoga, control of the senses by intelligence, work without fruitive desire, and position of a neophyte like a beginner. So now Arjuna, he wanted to clear up these confusing matters so that like people like us, common man, he could accept them without any misunderstanding or misinterpretation. He says, Krishna, ekam vada, tell me one thing. There are so many ways you're telling, right? So ekam vada, tell me one. Although Krishna had no intention of confusing Arjuna by any kind of jugglery of words, Arjuna could not follow the process of Krishna consciousness either by inertia or by active service, right? By his questions, he's trying to clear. He's trying to clear the path of Krishna consciousness for all of us only, who really seriously want to understand this whole mystery of Bhagavad Gita. To be eligible to ask a question to a teacher, if I want to ask a question to a teacher, what is the first qualification one should have? It is the qualification of surrender. First you have to surrender to the Guru and then question, right? Surrender and service and then question. Simply if you question and not surrender, then it's waste of time. So just like Arjun was talking in the beginning with Krishna, he was talking as like friends. So Krishna was talking very cautiously because it was a friendly talk. But when Arjuna surrendered to him, that saying that I accept you as my spiritual master, now he's going to talk. He's talking freely. Krishna is then telling Arjuna, I've already explained, right, that there are two classes of men who try to realize the self. Some are inclined to understand by drive, philosophical speculation, like, and some by devotional service. Devotional services like Kirtanam, Vandanam. There are 9 kinds of devotional service, which I will come to next. So Krishna says, like in 3.4 shloka, Krishna says that one thinks that by merely not working, one can achieve freedom from reaction, but that's not true. At the same time, renunciation alone, if you think you can renunciate everything and go and sit in the forest, one can attain perfection? No. But you are under the modes of material nature, right? All the 3 material nature is on the top of you. No one can refrain from doing something. Not even for a single moment can we sit like that. The mode of material nature is working on us. Therefore, what we need to do? We need to do our work and try to reach the goal. Goal is becoming Krishna consciousness, going into that mode, without which everything is considered a failure, right? But let's see, we can do, but कर्मेन्द्रियाणि संयम्य आस्ते मनसा स्मरन् इन्द्रियार्थान् विमूढात्मा मिथ्याचारस्य उच्यते.
One who restrains the sense of action, but whose mind dwells on sense objects, certainly deludes himself and is called a pretender.
He says, but you should develop Krishna consciousness, but there are many pretenders. You know, Indriyarthan Vimudhatma Mithyacharasya Uchyate. There are many pretenders. Mithyachara means pretenders who refuse to work in Krishna consciousness, but they will show, they will make a show of meditation. Well, actually, they want all kinds of sense enjoyments, but they are going to show. Such pretenders, they will be talking about all about philosophy also, you know, dry philosophy they will talk. And just to bluff the followers, sophisticated followers. But according to this verse, Karmendriyani Sanyamya Yaste Manasasmaran, Indriyarthan Vimudhatma Mithyacharasya Uchyate. According to this shloka, these are the greatest cheaters. But he who makes a show of being a yogi, while he is actually trying to enjoy or searching for the objects for sense gratification, they are called biggest cheaters, right? Sometimes they may be speaking philosophy, but still you can see in the picture, you know, he is looking like a sannyasi, he is holding a cigarette in his hand and he's having a mobile phone. Having a mobile phone is not wrong, because we also are using mobile phones. We use it for Krishna consciousness. But you are trying to show as if you are sannyasi, and then sannyasi means you have completely, you have left everything, right? And he's holding a cigarette in his hand. Such pretenders' mind is always impure, and therefore they don't have their show of yogic meditation has of no value, right? Srila Prabhupada said that one should act for Krishna very seriously in order to become fully Krishna conscious, you know. And we should not try and sit and imitate some great personalities. Haridas Thakur was a great personality, he said. And Srila Bhakti Siddhartha Saraswati Thakur once condemned such imitation. Somebody was trying to imitate Haridas Thakur, who used to do so many rounds of chanting, right? Mithyachara, you are becoming a mithyachara, like a pretender, right? So he said, I think something, it was in Bengali only, I'm not sure I can pronounce well. He said, Dushta mana tumi kesera Vaishnava, something like that. He said, my dear mind, what kind of a devotee are you? You know, Pratisthara tare nirjanera ghare. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing properly Bengali thing, But he said simply for cheap kind of adoration, you are sitting in a secluded place and Tava Harinama Kevala Kaitava means you are pretending to chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra, but this is all cheating. You are just trying to show. So this is what he said. And Srila Prabhupada said the whole history of the world, if you study, everything is history of sense gratification. Everyone wants sense enjoyment only. For example, some few years ago, Hitler had come into the scene. Srila Prabhupada said, Hitler came, there was a great upheaval in Europe, right? And America also. Whole world was in trouble that time. But after he was gone, finished, everything finished. What did he do? He had his sense gratification. He wanted his government to run this way or that way according to his own senses. Another like Mr. Churchill or the American president, they had their own kind of sense gratification. They wanted to. It was a war of sense gratification basically. Leader is trying to project or present another program. There was a clash. That was what was going on then. He said everybody wanted just sense gratification. They just want to be like that. So trying to be a sannyasi and trying to control senses, that is not very easy. It is not easy. So even many elevated souls, like there was a king Bharata, also fell down from that level. He was an elevated soul, but he fell down, right? So this is a story of King Bharata. He was a very wise and experienced king. However, anyway, after a while, he gave up his palace, everything, queen, kingdom. He wanted to dedicate his life to self-realization. So he went into the forest. He went into the forest, he would sing hymns to glorify Krishna. And later in the day, he used to collect fruits, roots. He would eat whatever he would first offer to Krishna, and then he would eat as prasadam. So one day, as he was meditating at the river bank, he saw a pregnant doe. She came to drink water. And while she was drinking, a lion in the nearby forest roared very loudly. So she was very much scared. So out of fear, she jumped into the river, and baby deer fell out from her womb. And the deer was very frightened, and she was very weak from the miscarriage that happened, right? So she entered a cave, and later on soon she passed away. So Bharata had great. He saw that he was very compassionate person. He saw the fawn, the baby, floating down the river. So he lifted the baby from the water and he brought it to his ashram. There, because he was a self-realized soul, basically. So he saw all living beings with equal vision, and he knows that there is a soul present in all the bodies, right? So he fed the deer daily with fresh green grass. He made sure that the baby was comfortable. Then soon, slowly, what happened? He developed attachment for this deer. He would walk with it. He would give him some bath, and he would even eat with it. So whenever he would go to the forest to collect some fruits, and he would always take the deer with him because he was scared. Somebody will come, some wild animal may come and attack the deer. So he would always keep it with him. Then he would enjoy also as the baby was growing up. He would enjoy and play like a child with as he was playing like a child. The deer. He would often carry the deer on his shoulders, show great affection. Slowly, his heart filled with love for the deer got very much attached. So he would he started neglecting the spiritual practice that he was doing. He neglected his meditation. Then slowly he got distracted from the path of self realization and could think of nothing but the deer. So one day he was meditating. He started thinking of the deer. He said, instead of Lord Krishna, he started thinking of deer only. And breaking his concentration, he looked around. Where did the deer go? What happened? I hope some wild animal may not have eaten it. And why did the deer not return? Is it safe? What happened to it? And then he started thinking. He was like, it was very overwhelming for him, and he was overwhelmed with concern. And he started going in. He went in search of the deer. So while he was searching, it was night time. So he couldn't see well. So he fell into a crevice and he was injured. Lying there at the point of his death, because he fell down, right? He visualized the deer suddenly appearing and sitting by his side, and it was watching him at the moment of death, that time. So at the moment of death, what occupied his mind? His mind was completely focused on his the pet, the deer. So in Bhagavad Gita also, Krishna said, "Yam yam vapi smaran bhavam tyajatyante kalevaram tam tamaivaiti kaunteya sada tad bhava bhavitaha." Says whatever state of being one remembers when he quits the body, that state he will attain without fail. So what was he thinking at the last minute? He was thinking about the deer. So consequently, what happened? He was a great soul, elevated soul, but at the last minute, he was thinking about the deer. So in his next life, King Bharata entered the body of the deer. Although most living beings are unable to remember the previous birth, normally we don't remember our previous birth, but because of the spiritual advancement that King Bharata had, even in the animal body, he could understand the cause of his taking that birth. And he began to really feel very sad, and he kind of lamented, said, "What a fool I was. I have fallen from the path of self-realization. I gave up my family. I gave up my kingdom. I went to a place in forest to meditate, and I was doing also. I was singing hymns. I was trying to glorify Krishna also, and but due to my small foolishness, I let my mind attach to of all things. He got his mind attached to a deer, and now he got the body of a deer. He had no one else to blame but himself, right? On the other hand, what happens if a sincere person tries to control the active senses by the mind? If he does that, what happens? Then he says, Yastvindriyani manasa niyamyarabhaterjuna karmendriya karma yogam asaktasya vishishyate.
On the other hand, if a sincere person tries to control the active senses by the mind and begins karma yoga in Krishna consciousness without attachment, he is by far superior.
Sincere person tries to control the active senses of the mind and begins karma yoga instead of being pseudo transcendentalists for the sake of sense enjoyment. It is far better to remain in your own work, own business, execute the purpose of life. And what is that? What is that? It is to be free from material bondage. And we want to enter Goloka, Krishna's Goloka, right? So the whole institution of Varna and Ashrama, why is it designed? It's designed to help us reach this goal of life. We are all like right now we are all householders. So we as householders also we can reach this destination. How? By service, regulated service in Krishna consciousness. For self-realization, one can live in a controlled life as prescribed in the Vedic Shastras, and we can carry out our work, without attachment, and we can make progress. Srila Prabhupada also says in his purport, when I read his purport, it was written that a sincere person who follows this method is far better than a false pretender who adopts show bottle spiritualism. He uses this word, very nice word, show bottle spiritualism. Means you cheat the innocent public. Show bottle spiritualism, you are just showing off your spiritualism. He says it is better you remain situated in your home, do your service without attachment rather than showing off. He says that a sincere sweeper in the street is far better than a charlatan. Charlatan is a person who is falsely claiming, to have a special knowledge or special skill. And he says he's a street sweeper is better. Yeah, and then a charlatan meditator who meditates only for the sake of making a living. They just want to show that yogi just wants to show off. A sweeper is better than that. He's at least doing his duty. So Srila Prabhupada uses the word show bottle spiritualism. I read it in the pulpit. It was a very nice word. Yajnarthat karmano netra lokoyam karma bandhanah tadartham karma kaunteya mukta sangas samachara.
Work done as a sacrifice for Vishnu has to be performed, otherwise, work causes bondage in this material world. Therefore, O son of Kunti, perform your prescribed duties for his satisfaction, and in that way, you will always remain free from bondage.
That is what. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada says, we have to work. We have to work for the satisfaction of Vishnu. Any work done in this material world will be a cause of bondage. Both good or evil work, both will have reaction. And any kind of reaction will bind us. So what has one to do in this situation? We have to work in Krishna consciousness. We have to satisfy Krishna. We have to satisfy Vishnu. While performing such activities, if we are in Krishna consciousness, we feel free in a liberated stage. In the beginning, it requires expert guidance. We need a guru, right? So we need to be under the expert guidance of a devotee of Krishna, or under the instruction of Krishna himself, like Arjuna. Arjuna had the opportunity, right? Under whom Arjuna had the opportunity. Arjuna was a disciple of Krishna then. Sorry. Nothing should be performed for our sense gratification. Everything should be done for the satisfaction of Krishna. When Srila Prabhupada was giving lecture on the Nectar of Devotion, that book, in Vrindavan, he was giving this lecture. He said, generally we commit a lot of sinful activities, sometimes knowingly, sometimes unknowingly. For example, just like we are walking on a street or a road, we are killing so many ants, so many insects, God knows what all we are killing unknowingly, right? So these are all sinful activities. You do not know. You do not want to kill the ants, but still unknowingly we are killing, right? So suppose we are taking water out of the jug. Nearby there are some bugs or insects or whatever. Some of them may die. So when we are making using mortar and pestle, whatever we are doing to make spices, there might be some insects. We don't know what is dying, what is not dying. Everything is happening unknowingly. So Srila Prabhupada says that we are committing sinful activities. So what to do? How to save ourselves? So that reply is given in Bhagavad Gita. The first line of the shloka, ninth one that is there. Yajnarthat karmano netra lokoyam karma bandhanaha. He says, if you do not act, if you do not engage yourself in Krishna consciousness, then you become implicated with so many sinful activities. So that is for sure. So what we have to do? We have to take the path of Krishna consciousness without fail. Otherwise, we will remain entangled in this. Karma bandhanaha, we will remain in this karma bandhan. Even if he is doing pious activities, right? He becomes entangled in karma bandhanaha, in bondage. He will have to take birth. So once he was discussing with Srila Prabhupada also told the difference between a devotee and a non-devotee. He says a common man on seeing a rose flower says, "Oh, this is a beautiful flower. Let me take it and enjoy it." But a devotee looks at that rose flower and he says, "How God's energy is acting. Through his energy, such a nice thing has come out. Therefore, it should be offered to Krishna. It is Krishna's property." That's how he thinks. He said, "Isha Vasyam idam sarvam." It's like Krishna's property. So it should be offered to Krishna. And devotee, after offering to the Lord Krishna, he, like a prasadam, he will smell it. This is higher consciousness. In the lower consciousness, we'll say, "Oh, here is a beautiful flower. Let me take it and let me enjoy." And Srila Prabhupada says, this is the difference between lower consciousness and higher consciousness, right? So what does a devotee do, right? It is explained in this next coming verse. Yajna shishtashinas santo muchyante sarva kilbishaihi bhunjate te tvagam papa ye pachantyatma karanat.
The devotees of the Lord are realized from all kinds of sins because They eat food which is offered first for sacrifice. Otherwise, who prepare food for personal sense enjoyment verily eats only sins.
Very nicely he said. Devotees, they offer first as prasadam. So devotees of Krishna, they are in Krishna consciousness. They are called santas. Yajna Shishtashinas santaha. Sant means they are always in love with the Lord. And it is described in Brahma Samhita. Premanjana Churita Bhakti Vilochanena Santas Sadaiva Hridayeshu Vilokayanti Yam Shyama Sundaram Achintya Gunaswarupam Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. He says, I worship Govinda, who is Shyam Sundar Roop of Krishna. He is having so many attributes, innumerable attributes. And pure devotees see in their hearts of heart with the eyes of devotion. So they are talking about Krishna. The santas, that sant, being always in love with Krishna. They are always in love with Govinda. They are always in love with Mukunda, Krishna. The all attractive, Krishna, all attractive. They cannot accept anything without first offering it to God. They will offer it to God, they will give the bhoga, and then they will offer the remnants as prasadam. Therefore, such devotees always perform yajnas in different modes of devotional service. So there are different devotional services, like I stated earlier also. Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, Archanam. There are 9 kinds of devotional services we can do. Like Shravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakhyam, Atmanivedanam. There are so nine ways you can perform devotional services to the Lord. And these performances, of yajnas, keep them away from sinful contamination in this material world. So others, some prepare food, right? They prepare for themselves, for their own sense gratification. Srila Prabhupada says they are thieves. They're eaters of all kinds of sins. If he is both a thief and sinful, it's not possible, right? So in order for people to become happy, in all respect, they should be taught to perform the easy process of Sankirtana Yajna. What is Sankirtana Yajna? Is nothing but chant Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Just keep chanting. Be in full Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, there can be no peace or happiness, he says. This is what Srila Prabhupada says. He says, what is the benefit of eating prasadam only? If we offer it to Krishna, he will take care of everything, and we will be released from all kinds of sins. Even so, people say that Krishna, how can Krishna see? How can Krishna taste? He doesn't come out. Like Krishna doesn't need. He is a spiritual being. Like he can use any kinds of his senses. Just even seeing is enough, right? We have to understand that. Supreme Lord Krishna is Yajna Purusha, or as it is shown now in the next shloka, I will read about it. Annad bhavati bhutani parjanyadanna sambhavaha yajnat bhavati parjanyo yajnah karma samudbhavaha.
All living bodies subsist on food grains, which are produced from rains. Rains are produced by performance of yajna, sacrifice, and yajna is born of prescribed duties.
So here Krishna is known as Yajna Purusha, right? Krishna is the master of all demigods who serve him as the different limbs of the body, serve the whole, right? Or hands, legs, everything. Like all the demigods are like his limbs, hands, legs, everything. And demigods are like Indra, Chandra, Varuna. They're all appointed officers, and they manage all the material affairs. And Vedic direct sacrifices to satisfy these demigods. Vedas tell that you have to satisfy these demigods, right? So that they may be pleased. How? To supply air, to supply light, to supply water, sufficient enough so that we can produce grains. So, but when Lord Krishna is worshipped, the demigods who are different limbs of the Lord are also automatically worshipped if you are worshipping Krishna. So therefore there is no separate need to worship the demigods, right? So how are rains produced? They are produced by the performance of yajna to satisfy Vishnu. For this reason, what happens? The devotees of the Lord who are in Krishna consciousness, they offer food to Krishna and then they eat. It's the process which will nourish the body. It will nourish the body spiritually. So by such actions, what happens? Not only the past sins or the sinful reactions of the body are gone or vanquished, but the body also becomes very much immunized to all the contamination of this. So how do we immunize ourselves? By chanting Hare Krishna, right? So see how in this picture you can see we study and then we do the yajna. Once the yajna is done, we do the sacrifice. Sacrifice, if we do please the God, it rains. If it is raining, then we get food grains. If we get food grains, we are able to eat. This is the cycle, right? So how is the cycle going? You can see like this. So what are the religious sacrifices prescribed in the 4 yugas? The prescribed religious sacrifices in 4 yugas were in Satyuga. They used to live for a long time, 1 lakh years. So they would do meditation. They had time. After finishing all their duties, they could go to the Himalayas and they could do meditation. Then came Treta Yuga. They used to do Agni sacrifice. Then came Dwapar Yuga, where they would do temple worship. They would go to temple and do all the worship. But in Kali Yuga, what happened? We couldn't do Agni worship because there was no pure ghee is not available. Nobody knows those pure mantras. Everything is not there, right? So even temple worship now, because of COVID also, who goes to the temple now? Everybody is sitting at home. So it's very difficult. So what is the sacrifice that has been prescribed in Kali Yuga? It is chanting of Hare Krishna mantra. So meditation, sacrifice, temple, chanting Hare Krishna. It is saying about Kali Yuga. It says in Bhagavad Gita, chapter 10, I think 25th shloka, I think. Yeah. Maharishīnām bhruguraham giramasmekam aksharam yajñānām japayajñosmi sthavarānām himalayah. He says, out of all the sacrifices, Arjuna, I am japa, yajna. That is the chanting of the holy name. He says in 10.5, chapter 10, we'll come to that also. And who gave us this? Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is Krishna himself. He came 500 years ago in Kali Yuga to preach Hare Krishna mantra. He was the latest recent incarnation of God, Sri Krishna. He started his worldwide Sankirtan mission of propagation of chanting the holy name of the Lord. And Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. He also left 8 shlokas, about in what Shishtashtakam. He gave the glories of the names of Lord and the mood one must have to chant and to be a devotee. He said, Cheto Darpana Marjanam, Bhava Mahadavagni Nirvapanam, Shreya Kairav Chandrika Vitaranam, Vidya Vadhu Jivanam. He said, glory to Sri Krishna Sankirtanam, which it cleanses the heart. Cheto Darpana Marjanam means it cleanses the whole heart of all the dust that has been there, accumulated for years and years and years, and it extinguishes the fire of conditioned life. There's so much of dust. Everything, by chanting this Harinam, everything will be purified. It will be clear. He also says in Srimad Bhagavatam, it is written that in the age of Kali, intelligent persons perform chanting to worship the incarnation of Godhead, who constantly sing the names of Krishna. Although his complexion is not blackish, he is Krishna himself. He is accompanied by his associates, servants, weapons, and confidential companions. It is written in Srimad Bhagavatam about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He injects one with transcendental Krishna consciousness, which merges the chanter in transcendental bridge. He says, in the age of Kali, intelligent persons perform chanting to worship Krishna, and always constantly sing the names of Krishna. And he says that his complexion is not blackish. He's Krishna himself. It's about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He's accompanied by his associates. So we should all always together should chant Hare Krishna Mahamantra all the time. And Srila Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, he was a famous disciple of Lord Chaitanya. He said the principle of devotional service having been lost, Sri Krishna Chaitanya had appeared to deliver again. Otherwise, in Kali Yuga, what do we have? We can't do meditation. It's very difficult. It takes years together. We can't do yajna sacrifice, agni sacrifice. We can't do temple worship. So what do we have? So he gave us this process of devotion. He was very kind, very merciful, and he was distributing this love of Krishna to us. We should be attracted more and more to Krishna's lotus feet, as he is comparing, as honeybees get attracted to lotus flower. So Sri Krishna Chaitanya's incarnation was mentioned in Vishnu Sahasranam also. In that Srila Jiva Goswami, I read, and I quote that. He said, Suvarnavarno he mango varangash chandanangadi. In his early pastimes, he appears to be as a householder with golden complexion. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is mentioned in Vishnu Sahasranam. So that also was mentioned about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And what is the gift that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave us to the people of Kali Yuga? Is Hari Nam Sankirtan. And that is chanting the Mahamantra. And therefore, we have to chant Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shrivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. And therefore, what happens? Without being attached to the fruits of activities, one should act as a matter of duty. For by working without attachment, one attains the supreme. This is 3.19. Tasmad asaktas satatam karyam karma samachara asakto yacharan karma paramapnoti purushaha. Says a person who is acting in Krishna consciousness all the time under proper guidance and without any kind of attachment, definitely is going to make progress and in the spiritual life. Arjuna is told that he should fight in the battle of Kurukshetra for the interest of Krishna, because Krishna wanted him to fight, right? To be a good man, to be a non-violent man, that's a personal attachment. But to act on the behalf of the Lord, or to act on the behalf of Krishna, is to act without attachment for the result. So a Krishna consciousness person, whoever is in Krishna consciousness, he has no attachment for the result, but he acts everything on the behalf of Krishna alone. He engages in all kinds of activities. It's not that he's not doing any work. He's doing every duty, everything. If you are a student, your duty is to study. If you are doing work, you have to do your work very well. But you should not be thinking, okay, if I do this, I will get this. Everything should be at the feet of Krishna. So what was Arjuna confusing devotional service to? He was thinking that it's inertia. Go and sit alone, inactivity. Don't do anything. Devotional service means don't do anything. But no, Krishna says not like that. It is not correct. In 21st shloka, he says, be a role model. Yadyada acharati sreshta tattadevetaro janaha sayat pramanam kurute lokastadanu vartate.
Whatever action performs, common men follow, and whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues.
He says you have to be a role model. People, what in general, they always require a leader who can teach people in practically. You have to show by your own self. A leader cannot teach public to stop smoking if he himself is smoking. You can't do that. You are not a leader then. So Lord Chaitanya, what did he say? He said a teacher should behave properly before he begins teaching. If I don't follow all the regulated principles, Under what authority can I tell my students to do it? So one who teaches in that way is called Acharya, right? The ideal teacher, Acharya, ideal teacher. Therefore, teachers must follow the principles of all the scriptures, whatever is there, to teach a common man. And everything should be done in Krishna consciousness, right? There's the teacher's teaching. It should be based on Shastras. Even in Srimad Bhagavatam, they said that one should follow in the footsteps of great devotees. So that is the way to progress if you want to go and have into the path of spiritual realization. Even if there is a king, he must also be following the standard books, right? Proper moral ethics he should follow, spiritual codes he should follow, right? Even the prime minister or the head of the family, father, or the school teacher, or the head of the state, everybody, they're all considered natural leaders, right? Of all the people. So they have to be a role model. So Krishna is telling Arjuna, don't be like that, be a role model. Common people are looking up to you. So you have to set up an example. So, न बुद्धिभेदं जनयेद् यज्ञानां कर्म संगिनां जोषयेत् सर्वकर्माणि विद्वान् युक्तः समाचरन्.
So as not to disrupt the minds of ignorant men attached to the fruitive results of prescribed duties. A learned person should not induce them to stop work. Rather, by working in the spirit of devotion, he should engage them in all sort of activities for the gradual development of Krishna consciousness.
Srila Prabhupada says in his purport, Vedeshta sarve aham eva vedyam, he says. He says all performances, everything is meant to understand Krishna. He says that is the ultimate goal of life. But because we are so conditioned souls, we do not know anything beyond, trying to enjoy the senses, trying to satisfy our senses. And they study the Vedas to that end only. But the sense gratification has to be gradually totally gone, and it should be elevated to Krishna consciousness. So realized soul in Krishna consciousness should not disturb others in their activities. He should act by showing. He should be a role model. He should show how the results of the work can be dedicated in the service of Krishna. So Srila Prabhupada in his lecture also said, Haridasa Thakur, he used to chant in a very secluded place. Now he used to chant 190 rounds, and such an elevated soul. He was a different level. Now, if we start imitating him, Haridasa Thakur chanted, so let me also sit down in a solitary place and start chanting. We cannot do that. We are still not at that level. We need to go to that, reach that level. It's not possible, right? Simply imitate and then, it's not correct. We should have a role model, but if we have to reach to that level, everyone, we should be engaged in our own work, whatever we are doing right now. And by the fruit of this work, we should serve Krishna. We can't start imitating elevated souls. He is in a different position. If one is elevated to that position, then it's a different issue. Then fine. But generally, it's not meant for ordinary people, right? We are still here. So we should do our duty, whatever duty we have, and we should try to serve the Lord by the result of the work. That should be the motto of life. Prakrite kriyamani gunai karmani sarvashah ahankara vimudhatma kartahamiti manyate.
The spirit soul, wildered by the influence of false ego, thinks himself the door of activities that are in actually carried out by the three modes of material nature.
This in the picture, you can see the three modes of material nature. This is Sattva Guna, yellow color, red color, passion, mode of passion, Rajas Guna, and this mode of ignorance, the black one, purple blackish one, the mode of ignorance, Tamo Guna. So these three are always acting on us. Something or the other, all the three are always acting on us. Two people, one in Krishna consciousness, one in material consciousness, they are working on the same level. They may be working on the same platform, but there is a wide gulf of difference in their position. The person in the material consciousness, he is convinced by the false ego, I am doing everything. This is mine. The materialistic person, he has no knowledge that ultimately he is under the control of Krishna only. He is under that false ego. He takes credit for everything. I am doing everything. I am independent. This is my, I have done it. He is actually under that false ego, which makes him forget that his relationship with Krishna, right? So, who thinks that he or she is doer of everything? A person who is under that false ego. If I am under not under false ego, I know Krishna is the ultimate enjoyer. But Arjuna still has a question. Arjuna still has a question. Ila Prabhupada in one of his lectures, he said, everyone is thinking, I am the greatest. That ahankara, vimudhatma, that, here's a struggle of vimudhatma competition is going on, he says. But in the end, he is under the control of nature. Everyone knows it. Because ultimately what happens, the death is going to come. All your ahankaras will be taken away. Everything will be finished. Mrityus sarva harashchaham, he said in chapter 10.34. However intelligent you may be, however proud you may be, however arrogant you may be, ultimately what will happen? You may be proud of your positions, you may be proud of your wealth, but ultimately death has to come. Death is there for sure. Just like Hiranyakashipu, he was very, very proud of his positions. He was controlling the three worlds. He was even troubling his own son, Prahlad Maharaj. But this way he was very proud of himself. But what happened in the end? Krishna came as Narsimha and everything was finished even in a second. So we shouldn't be under this false ego at all. Arjuna uvacha athakena prayuktoyam papam charati purushah anachannapi varshneya baladiva niyojitah.
Arjuna said, O descendant of Vishnu, by what is one impelled to sinful acts, even unwillingly, as if engaged by force?
So what? Part and parcel of Supreme. We are all part and parcel of Supreme, right? We're actually spiritual. We're actually pure and free from our material contamination. But what happens when we are coming in contact with this material nature? What is happening? Without hesitation, what is happening? Sometimes, even against our will, we are doing many, many sinful acts, even if we don't want to also. That is what happens. And Srila Prabhupada says, Krishna says that destruction in the course of performing one's duty is better than engaging in another's duty. For to follow in another's path is very, very dangerous. Like, for example, Arjun was a military man. He was a Kshatriya. So what was his duty? His business was to fight for a good cause, of course. But in the battlefield, he thought that, why should I engage myself in this killing? Better I retire from it. If I don't get my kingdom, I would go begging also. This begging is not for him. He is a Kshatriya. It's not for a military man. Krishna says, don't try to imitate a sannyasi or a brahmana. You are a Kshatriya. Your duty is to fight. You should follow your duty. Don't try to imitate others. One can attain perfection by being engaged in his own work, own occupation, provided he does it in Krishna consciousness. So Krishna is asking him to fight. He is a professional fighter. So if he fights in accordance with the order of Krishna, there is perfection, right? He said, Krishna said, Kama esha krodha esha rajoguna samudbhavaha mahashano mahapapma vidhyena miha vairinam. And he explains about lust, what lust does in Shloka 38. धूमेनाव्रियते वाणी यथादर्शो मलिन च यथोल्बेनावृतो गर्भः तथा तेनेदमावृतम्.
As fire is covered by smoke, as a mirror is covered by dust, or as the embryo is covered by the womb, the living entity is similarly covered by the different degrees of this lust.
Lust. There are 3 degrees of covering of the living entity, as it is shown in the picture also, you can see, by which pure consciousness is covered. It's concealed. This covering is but lust under different manifestations, like smoke in the fire, dust on the mirror, the womb around the embryo, right? About the embryo. When a living entity or jiva, he exhibits little bit of Krishna consciousness, he may be compared to fire covered by smoke. Although fire is necessary, where there is smoke, there is overt manifestation of fire, like in early stages. What happens? That is the early stage of Krishna consciousness. The dust on the mirror, it refers to cleaning process of the mind. It's the mirror of the mind by so many spiritual methods. The best process to clean that mind is to chant the holy name of the Lord or Krishna. Embryo that is covered by the womb, the analogy is given, that it is in a very helpless position, right? The baby is can't move inside that womb. It's lying there in one position. So he cannot move. The baby cannot move. This stage can be compared to that of a tree. They are comparing it with a tree cannot move. They are also living entities, right? The trees, but they cannot move. They have been put in such a condition of life by such exhibition, right, of lust, that they are almost, they cannot just, they are void of all consciousness. The covered mirror, the mirror, it is compared to birds and beasts. So much of dust is there. And as fire is covered by snow, this analogy is covering of lust. It refers to human being. The smoke covered fire, it is compared to human being. In form of human being, what happens? The living entity may revive a little bit of Krishna consciousness. We have the chance. We are human beings. We have the chance to revive little bit of Krishna consciousness. And if we can make little bit of development, that fire of the spiritual life that can be kindled in the human form of life. So we have to carefully handle the smoke in the fire, right? That can be made to blaze, so that we come out of the smoke and we have that spiritual kindlement in the spiritual life. Therefore, in human life, we have a chance. We have a chance to escape this cycle of birth and death and material existence. We have a chance because we have got human form of life. We can conquer the enemy. What is our enemy? Lust. Yesterday we did, right? Attachment carries to this. So by cultivation of Krishna consciousness, under the spiritual able guidance of spiritual guru, we can, how can one remain free from reactions while performing the duties? How? Just by being in Krishna consciousness. And Krishna advises Arjuna about this in 41st shloka. What does he say? Tasmat va indriyan yadav niyamya bharatarshaba papmanam prajahihinam jnana vijnana nashanam.
Therefore, O Arjuna, best of Bhartas, in the very beginning curb this great symbol of sin, lust, by regulating the senses and slay this destroyer of knowledge and self-realization.
Here Krishna is advising Arjuna. He says, regulate your senses, and from the beginning, so that he can curb the greatest sinful enemy, that is lust. So what does the lust do? It will destroy the urge for self-realization. It will destroy the jnana that that refers to that we are the spirit soul. We are not the body. It's going to destroy that. It destroys the vijnana also. What is vijnana? It refers to know the position of spirit soul and the relation with the supreme soul. It destroys that. This lust destroys everything. We are all part and parcel of the Krishna. Therefore, what are we supposed to do? We are part and parcel of Krishna. So what are we supposed to do? We are supposed to serve the Lord, right? So this consciousness is called Krishna consciousness, being and serving the Lord. So what impels one to commit sinful activities, even unwillingly, even by force? It is lust that comes. So when the love of God goes down, we don't love God anymore. It turns into lust. And it is not easy to return to normal condition. But then Krishna is very merciful, right? Is very merciful. Even for a late beginner, even now, any late beginner can become a lover of Krishna by following the regulative principles of devotional service. From any stage of life, any stage, we can begin our journey towards Krishna consciousness. We just have to do devotional service and reach. We can go to Golok Dham. So he says here, We have bodily platform, right? Prabhupada once said that when he was in Columbus once, in a big meeting, there were more than 1,000 students and everybody was chanting. He said at that time, everyone was working on spiritual platform. We have bodily platform, and then we are trying to, then we move on to sensual platform, and then mental, intellectual, and then last spiritual platform. So then we are in the, please mute yourselves, please, if you don't mind. Hare Krishna. Then the concept of European, American, Indian, it is based on bodily platform. This is, he is European, he is American, he is Indian. That's bodily platform. So long as one is under that impression that this is the body, he is a body, he cannot make progress in the movement. Lord Chaitanya also says that all living entities, we are all servants of Krishna. The servitorship cannot be rendered from material platform, because Krishna is not matter, right? He is Satchit Ananda Vigraha. So one has to become free from all the contamination we have, that contamination of matter, which represented in form of body, in form of mind, in form of intelligence, in form of ego. We have to remove all this, and then, until then, one cannot become a pure devotee. We have to transcend. We have to transcend this position. We have to clean our heart from such rubbish concepts of life, that I am American, I am European, I am Indian, I am this, I am that. Srila Prabhupada says that. And anyone keeping himself under such impression at the same time, and if he's still trying to reach Krishna consciousness, he is a neophyte devotee, means new, right? Lord Chaitanya has given us a very nice method of chanting Hare Krishna, right? And if we execute that without any offense, we can come to spiritual platform and serve Krishna, of serving Krishna. And unless we serve Krishna, there is no possibility of getting his grace. And without his grace, it is impossible to reach Krishna consciousness. In Srimad Bhagavatam also, we will find in first canto, he says, the first class occupational duty is to develop the love for God. We have to develop the love of God without any kind of motive. Then we reach the spiritual platform. We cannot just remain in the bodily platform. Because see, senses are superior to dull matter. Mind is higher than senses. Intelligence is still higher than the mind. Soul is even higher than the intelligence. So, Indriyani paran yahu, indriyebhya param manaha, manasastu para buddhe, buddhi yogi parasas, buddhe paratastu saha.
The working senses are superior to dull matter. Mind is higher than the senses. Intelligence is still higher than the mind. And he, the soul, is even higher than the intelligence.
So by reading this, you understood, right? Srila Prabhupada here explains. He says senses are different outlets for the activities of lust. For lust, these senses are all different outlets. Lust is reserved within the body, right? And it is given vent through where? Through the senses it comes out. Therefore, senses are superior to the body as a whole. So what are the sitting places of the lust? Where does the lust sit? It sits in the mind. It sits in the intelligence. It sits in the senses, right? But these outlets are not in use when there is a superior consciousness, or when we are serving Krishna or are in Krishna consciousness. Then this will not. When we are in Krishna consciousness, soul is directly engaged with Krishna. So naturally, soul is the highest. Everything is under the soul. So if soul is the highest and it is directly engaged with Krishna or the Supreme, naturally all other subordinates, namely like intelligence, then the mind and the senses, everything will be automatically engaged to Krishna then, right? Because soul is the highest. So if mind is directly engaged in the service of Lord constantly all the time, then there is no chance that the senses will become entangled in any other way, right? So the soul is the highest. If we are constantly in touch with Krishna, then everything else, because it is subordinate, it will also listen to it. Like you can see in this picture. Evam buddhva param, Evam buddha puram buddhva sanstaphyatmanamaatmana jai shatrum mahabhaho kamarupam durasadam.
Thus, Krishna says, thus knowing oneself to be transcendental to the material senses, mind and intelligence. O mightily armed Arjuna, one should steady mind by the deliberate spiritual intelligence, Krishna consciousness, and thus by spiritual strength conquer this insatiable enemy known as lust.
You can see the senses. Senses are like this: the mind, the intelligence, and the self. If by intelligence one engages one mind in Krishna consciousness, by complete surrender to Krishna, then automatically what will happen is mind will become very strong, right? And then even though the senses are very strong, like senses have been compared to, Srila Prabhupada has in his purport has compared the senses to serpents. With serpents, they will be no more effective than serpents with broken fangs. They have these fangs, right? But they're all broken. So if he says that if mind completely surrenders to Krishna, then the mind becomes stronger and the senses will become weak. And even though the soul is the master of both intelligence and mind and senses also, of course, still, unless it is strengthened, soul is the master of all this. But if it is strengthened by association of Krishna or with Krishna or in Krishna consciousness, there is every chance that we may fall down due to the agitated mind, So it is very important that we remain in Krishna consciousness. So what is the takeaway message? The takeaway message is always chant Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, right? So how many number of rounds you are chanting after this lesson? I will be asking. We need to chant. How many rounds you are chanting? I'll be asking after this class. So let's see the chapter summary before that. Topic was renunciation or action. Ekam vada. Then he says Nishkam Karma Yoga. You have to do Nishkam Karma Yoga. So Niyata Kuru Karma. Karma Kanda to Karma Yoga. Karma Kanda is doing your work, finding all the fruitive results. And Karma Yoga is Nishkam Karma Yoga, right? So lead by example. Be a role model. Then he says greatest enemy. Greatest enemy is lust. So in next chapter, Krishna will explain to Arjuna about the transcendental knowledge. वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्य एव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः. Finish this with everyone together. Let's do it once. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna,
Hare Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare
Hare Krishna.